Video, what we're going to do is we're going to create a photo album. So first thing I'm going to do is let's launch XAMPP, and with the servers running, I'm going to go explore the files, and I'll take a look here in the HT docs in a folder called POI. I've got some files, and I've started to create this PhotoViewer .php. So let's just take a look at the code here, and what it's going to do, it's going to list the photos or actually all the files in a particular folder. So let me come up with a directory, and I'm just going to take a look on my computer here. I'll go to Drive H, and in my pictures I am sure, in my pictures, I've got a folder here called Istanbul with a couple pictures. So there you go, that'll be good enough. So I'll copy that folder into the POI folder, and I'll paste it in there, and there is a directory called Istanbul. So I'm going to create a variable in PHP called directory, and it's going to point to the folder called Istanbul. Perfect. And then I'm going to use a function here called array_diff. And what it does is it's going to scan a directory of the directory variable called Istanbul. So it's going to scan for a directory in its constant or folder that it's in right now, and look for a folder called Istanbul. And then what it's going to do is it's going to turn it into an array called scan directory. And so let me just hit save, and I'll run it just to see if it works. And so PhotoViewer, and it looks like it works. There's no errors. But I didn't actually put any codes in it yet, except for this little line of code here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to see what scan directory is. So how about let's echo echo file array number 2 of the variable scanned directory is, and let's put that value. So $, the variable is called scanned directory, and I want element number 2. So there's element number 2. So let's just run and see what the second element is in the folder. I'll hit save, and if I refresh, it says array 2 of the variable scan directory is Istanbul panorama.jpg. So let's go quick and take a look at that. And if I look in here, it looks like the first file is called Istanbul panorama.jpg. So what's the third and fourth? Is it Mosque Istanbul and postcard.jpg? Well, let's take a look. And what I could do is simply I could copy that echo statement, since it works. And I'll just copy that, and let me put array third item, and maybe I don't even need all this other stuff. I'll just say 3 and 4, just so it's easier, and I'll echo the third and fourth array element. By the way, it's gonna sort of put all in one line, but that's fine. And it says array 2 is Istanbul panorama, array 3 is mosque, and array 4 is postcard. Well, how about if I want to actually display those as images? So instead of displaying the name, I just wanted to actually make a photo album and display images. And so how do we display an image in HTML? Well, in HTML, to display an image, I say image, source equals, and the name of the URL of the source file. And then I might add some other things like height is 200 and the width is going to be 200. Okay, so that's how I display an image. If I want to display them one after the other, I'll put a break afterwards. So we'll go down the next line. So that's some HTML I want to echo out. So what I'm going to do is I'll put that in quotation marks and I'll echo that out. But of course, I need the URL to be the URL. So I need to replace that with scan directory right here. And I also need to tell it that it's not just, well, let me make it not work and then I'll explain why it didn't work. So I'm going to display the first picture that I had. And so I do that by adding that string with that string. So there's a URL. But it's not going to work. And let me just hit save here and I'll show you why it doesn't work. I'll explain why it doesn't work in just a second. So there you go, and there we have the picture, but it doesn't look. And if you view the source looks pretty good. It says IMG source equals Istanbul panorama. That's right, height and width. Well, what's not quite right about that, and I'll fix it right here, is it's up a folder. If you take a look at my folder structure, Istanbul is in a separate folder from the POI folder. So here I've got the photo viewer, but I'm trying to load photos that are in this directory called Istanbul. So I need to list a directory name. And so to do that, what I'm going to also need to add here is I need to say, before I add this, I need to say in the directory called Istanbul, and we also put a slash, meaning go up a folder. So it's called Istanbul slash, and that's just the operating system's structure. They use slashes to say that is a folder. So folder name slash and then the file name. So I think I pretty well have that. Let's I'll just, to make it simpler, I'll delete the other stuff and we can just take a look and we should see a picture, the first picture from that photo album. And so let's take a look and reload the page, and voila, there is the picture, the first picture. And I could repeat that process, and in fact I'm going to, just to show you. Let's copy that and paste it, and I'll display picture number 3 and picture number 4. So all the pictures I have in there. And so now you'll see here is a, line 11. What did I forget? Aha. No semicolon. I didn't see it. It was off the screen. So that's my excuse why I didn't see it. Okay, so here you'll see picture 1, picture 2, picture 3. Now what would be even better is if it automatically went in and generated all the pictures, used a variable and a loop to go through and do all the pictures. So let's do that next. So I want to make a web page that's automatically going to display all the pictures in the variable called scan directory, and we'll have it point to that that folder. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my pictures and I'm going to find a better photo album. So I've got an album here called Bali. I was in Bali, and here's Bali. I've got a picture of elephants, and there's 13 pictures. So there you go. So a few more pictures. So I'm going to copy this folder and I'll stick that in my POI folder. So there's Istanbul, but let's add a folder of pictures of Bali this time. So here's Bali. So Bali, and it's got all those pictures. And what I want to do this time is I want it to loop. But how many pictures? Well, I could go in and manually figure out how many pictures, but I don't know how many pictures. So how can I find out how can I count how many items the array loads up when I do a scander of a directory and I use this array diff? How many items are going to be included in this, and what we're going to use is we're going to use a variable called, or a function called count. And so I'm going to put count in here. And so I set a variable called the array length. I'll call it array length. and it's going to count the scan directory. It's going to count my array called scan directory and find out how many items are in that folder. And then I'm going to loop. So I'll make a variable for x equals 2. Remember, we started always at the second item to the length of the array, and x is going to increase by 1. And then I'm going to echo image source equals directory, the scanned directory of x. So it's going to be 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, and 7. And then however, I don't know how many pictures. I think there was 13, but I could be wrong. And then we'll end the loop by putting another curly bracket there. So let me save this, and let's go to my page now. Oh, and I also need to say that we're not going to do Istanbul. We're going to change the folder to Bali. So in the Bali folder, it's now going to have 13. So let me hit save, and if I refresh, there's 13 pictures of my trip to Bali. There you go. So picture 1, 2, 3, well, I don't know how many, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and so forth. And just to let you know, the reason I start at 2, I kind of skirted over that. Watch what happens if I start with array length item 1. You're going to see that it's going to come up with an error. It's going to say, oh, it doesn't know what picture 1 is. And if I view the source, so let's view page source, the first picture that it came up with is image source is Bali with no file name attached behind it. Notice the next picture is Bali 1, Bali 2, and all the rest of them. The reason is because when it does the array and puts the array diff and it puts it and scans the directory, it comes up with the, if you look at a directory listing, let me just show you a directory listing in PHP. There is, it comes up with dot and dot dot, and that goes back to subfolder. So those are kind of hidden file names, and so that's why, without actually a name attached to it. So that's why we start at 2, the second item. And by the way, if I would change this to the Istanbul folder, you'll see that it will now display the whole Istanbul folder. And so I'll select list, and now it does Istanbul, second, third, and fourth picture. So based on what I have in there. The other thing I can do, the other thing I can do with this that I wanted to show is just displaying 1. And so I'll make a link to go back and forth, but we've already made a long enough